Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Coffer.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the lighter side of the spectrum. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. If you're a parent, educator, therapist, or honestly just someone trying to better level up and understand autism, you've probably felt this tension. Are we trying to manage behavior, or are we trying to support human beings? Because they're not the same thing. And today's guest is someone who has helped shift that conversation, not just nationally, but globally. Dr. Amy Laurent is a developmental psychologist, co-creator of the SCERTS Model, and co-founder of Autism Level Up, which is a great website and framework that focuses on regulation, respect, autonomy, and real support instead of compliance and control. So this episode, we're going to be moving from behavior management to relationship-centered support and a whole bunch of other things, from what's wrong to what's needed, from power struggles to co-regulation. Amy, welcome to the show. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like you've done the whole show, and I'm good.
We're good.
Everything you said.
We're out. Peace out. So I appreciate that. Let's start from the top, Amy. And I'm really curious because I don't know the full backstory, but can you talk about how you first kind of entered the autism world and kind of like what brought you into this space?
Serendipity. There is no good explanation except for fate, I will tell you.
I want to hear this.
I went to OT school. I was going to be a hand therapist. I was like all into biomechanical. I wanted to be in the operating room with the surgeons, whole thing. And I had a neurology professor who got a hold of me and was like, ha, that's not what you want to do. And you love the brain. And they were right. So I got really into the brain and neuroscience and neurology and wound up doing tons of like independent studies and things in college and just really fun work that most students weren't getting to do. It was awesome. And so I went on to specialize in traumatic brain injury. That was what I was doing when I graduated from college. And I needed to make a move. And when I needed to make the move, I had to leave a job where I was working in a trauma center, a level 1 trauma center, ICU through rehab. OTs were working to support people. Like we would be in the trauma ICU beds, like tactile kinesthetic guiding, like just really innovative work.
Wow.
And when I moved to Rhode Island, I had two thoughts. One, I didn't know where I was going to get a job because nowhere had the level of care that I was providing at this trauma level 1 center. And two was don't get a head injury in Rhode Island.
Okay.
And that was kind of terrifying.
Yeah, right.
And so I was still an OT and I needed a job. And I sat for a long time and thought, like, where can I apply the theories that I know that guide my practice, that I'm really passionate about, that all are connected and related. So thinking about things like neurodevelopmental theory, thinking about things like cognitive behavioral, sensory integration, like all the things that we use in neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, there's one clear answer, and it's pediatrics. And I was like, I never wanted to be a peds therapist. What am I doing? And my first client that I worked with was autistic. And I was hook, line, and sinker from that moment on and haven't done anything else. So if anyone's listened to my TEDx talk that I gave a few years ago, the story of Corey is very real. That it's absolutely what happened. I was presented with a behavior chart and I was bad at it. But I fell in love with just neurodivergence and supporting it and using all these theories. And I was really fortunate to be in a practice that was looking for providing alternatives to behavioral services in Rhode Island, because that was what you could get for in-home services. Wanted something developmental, teamed up with Dr. Barry Prezant, who some of your listeners
Oh,
might
okay.
know of Uniquely
Yeah,
Human.
absolutely. Yeah.
So Barry was the speech pathologist in the whole kind of alternative to behavior support. And my OT colleague, Lee Gerard, was kind of the OT, and then there was a psychologist, and each one of them kind of tapped their seconds, like they're the doers, the operational people. And I got tapped as the OT doer in this combination. And that's how I really teamed up with Barry and the SCERTS model and Emily. And yeah, again, there is no good explanation except the hands of fate and someone like moving strings around to say this is where you should be doing what you should be doing.
There might be something to that, right? Because I kind of feel the same way, in just the way things have unfolded, both for me personally and professionally, particularly in the last few years, as our son, as his world has opened up with communication and connecting with people, including Barry, who actually reached out to me a couple of months ago in response to a Substack article, and now we've connected and are collaborating in this world. So yeah, won't dive too much into that, but it's something that I've really started to believe a little bit more in.
I was just like, I'm supposed to be here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. All right, I'm doing it. If you
Yeah,
asked me when I was in college if I was going to work with kids, I would have been like, no, absolutely not.
right,
And now I'm like,
right.
bring them on. The younger, the better.
So I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's funny how life works out that way. But let's talk about kind of like that shift, right, from the focus on behaviorism. Um, when did what were you seeing early that maybe just didn't sit right with you? And because it sounds like it's something that you identified on your own, and then kind of grew into it, right? Had others who've helped shape it. But can you talk about that?
So I think OTs are really unique. I mean, as part of our degree, especially at the time that I went to school, so the degree structures changed a bit, but we had to do kind of mental health placements. And as that part of that mental health placement basically wound it up with a minor in psychology in addition to your majoring in OT. And so, of course, I was exposed to behaviorism like Skinner 101. Everybody gets exposed to that, but none of it actually really sat very well with me. And I think OTs as a field have always been biopsychosocial. Like we're always looking much broader than kind of
Hmm.
narrow mechanistic things. So I never bought into a behavioral framework, like for anything I was doing. And I mean, especially if you think back in my history, and I was talking about supporting brain injured individuals, like, yes, you give people clear boundaries and you help them understand kind of the way of the world and how to navigate through it. But you're always looking for the why and trying to help support their neurology so they're able to do it. So when I started working with autistic children, like I just brought that same philosophy over. Like I'm trained like not in mechanistic, simplistic things. I'm trained in like complex human development, biopsychosocial, the why and how do you provide support. And so I kind of fell into that. And so, and I wound it up in the world of autism, and people were like, oh, the go-to strategy is behavior modification. I was like, what?
What?
These are little
Right.
humans that are developing. Like this doesn't make sense to me, like, because it's not how I was taught to think about human development. So I think OTs, we have a leg up in questioning kind of what the status quo and what practice is. And when I got introduced to that field, and then the alternative, that how do we create an alternative program for in-home support for families, then I got really steeped into kind of understanding what was out there, and that just kind of like solidified my view. And I mean, you cannot work with a more humanistic person than Barry Persant to understand like who somebody is, how they function in the world, and how do you provide support. So I think like my background coming into kind of that kind of relational framework with those people as my mentors just kind of really helped me take off. And I jokingly referred to my TED Talk when I talked about the story of Corey, the first child I worked with. They gave me a behavior management plan. And it had all these things that Corey wasn't allowed to do. So we're talking like old school behavior plan. It
Old
wasn't even
school,
like
yeah.
positive reinforcement. It was like, if you don't do these things, you get a token, like it wasn't like if you do this thing. And they were like no silly talking. There was like a
Oh,
no
right.
laughing. Like it
Oh
was
my
just
gosh.
really bad.
Harsh.
It was
Yeah.
bad, awful, archaic behaviorism.
Yeah.
Let's just say like yes, I understand you probably have listeners who are like, well, that's not what we do today. Well, that's what Corey showed up with, like, honestly. And the behaviors by the end of the session had already taken the chart from me because like she's like, you can't do this. And I'm like, you're right, I can't. Because it doesn't work in this. Like I'm doing the same things you're asking him not to do. Because like we're having fun. We're playing together. This isn't about me controlling him. This is about me learning who he is and developing a relationship. And if that equates to like making funny noises and laughing at each other because that's how we're going to connect, that's what we're going to do.
I mean, to me, that just makes all the sense in the world. And I think you're right. I really appreciate what you said in terms of OTs. I think having this unique perspective, particularly in the kind of the world of autism. And I think it's one personally, I think is underappreciated and underutilized. I think there's such an emphasis, obviously in speech therapy, right? ABA now, of course, with the insurance mandates. I mean, it's one of those things where at the time, we cheered that ABA is going to be covered because we were told, when our son was 4 or 5, this is I hate using this word. This word seems to be overused. Every gold standard, right? Like you hear, throw it around. They're using it with everything. But that was the hope. At least we had hope
Right. Yep.
at the time, and that the fact that we didn't have to pay for it out of pocket, great, right? I mean, sure. And then we got into it and kind of saw what it was, and we're like, particularly in our case, Amy, because our challenge has always been. I mean, sure, there are kind of some of the traditional challenges that go along with autism, but really, the big one was communication. Stone just wasn't able to communicate. He couldn't vocalize, and all these things.
And
And
if
it's
you can't communicate, what's that going to do to your regulation?
exactly right. Like all these things that again I kind of know now in hindsight. By the time we didn't know, and again, it's kind of silly to look back and say, well, how is ABA or how's behavior therapy going to help you communicate better? I look back and just kind of shudder, thinking about it. But we're not
I
alone.
think it's what families are told, right?
It's
And
what
I
we're
think
told. Exactly.
that's what we have to be super realistic about when we're meeting with and supporting families, and especially if families have any like, I meet families all the time who have guilt around it, and I'm like, you can only do what you know. Like, and so if we're learning more, we're knowing better, we're going to start doing better. And, I think that's so important for families to know that it depends on who you meet in your journey when you meet them, like what you know and what you think the right course of action is.
The good thing is today, right? There's a lot more information available
Yes.
for parents than there were, again, in our case, 15 years ago. Um, could be a double-edged sword, right? It's not all, not all information is good information. But there are at least the resources and things like that you could turn to and find out, ask questions. How did it work for you? And I love seeing that. I love, I'm part of a number of
Yeah, and
different groups.
I think one of the things that kind of the developmental relational frameworks, we're finally getting our act together to work together better. And I don't mean that disparaging in any way. It's just,
No, you're right.
behaviorism is monolithic. Everybody learns about it in school. Like if you take a psychology 101 class, you know about Skinner, you know about antecedent behavior consequence. It's simple. It doesn't require much thought process, right?
Right.
But you have these really rich developmental relationship-based frameworks that exist, but we've operated kind of in silos, connected loosely. But now there's really a coalition coming together. And actually, there was an email that came out this week, which is, I guess I can talk about it because it exists. Well, it comes out of Floor Time, the DRBI, sort of kind of our Floor Time. They brought together SCERTS and Floor Time, Play Project, PACT, and a few others. And there is the developmental relationship-based coalition now. And they have gone in California after funding alternative. Now, this was a few months ago, the ruling that now, in addition to behavioral services in home, developmental services under this umbrella receive the same funding and consideration.
Oh, that's great.
Now this coalition, and that's I think that's what it is. Like behaviorists are kind of like set up as a business, like, and developmentalists are like, we're just in it for the right reasons. And now we're going, you know what, we really should probably organize and like this whole like lobbying thing and getting the funding thing. So parents have alternatives because still to this day, most of the funding still goes towards behavioral services, right? I mean, you can get therapeutic services like speech and OT, but like as in terms of getting something a little bit more robust with some parent coaching or something like that. But now this developmental relationship-based coalition, which is what it's called, is really kind of mobilizing to try to figure out like, how do we lobby? How do we make sure that families actually have choice, not just in like a philosophical way, but in a
Right.
practical, we can
The
access this
practical,
way.
right. Access. That's a huge issue. And that's super encouraging. It's funny. I mean, you talk about that, like having this coalition and that we're actually kind of all talking to each other, right? Yeah, but it's true. Like again, not to keep bringing it back to me, but like one of the things that struck me again early on was when we were kind of juggling multiple therapies, right? Between like going from floor time to ABA and speech and then with schools and all this. And I remember like suggesting having a conference call and like sharing notes and like kind of getting everyone on the same page. And people were like, oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, wow, that's a good. I'm like, is this such a novel idea? Like, like you said, I think there was such this approach of we approaching it in silos, as you'd mentioned,
Right. Yeah.
rather than in a collaborative standpoint. So it's good to see that. And you're right, it takes some formal organization to do that, lobbying, things like that.
Yeah.
That the ABA
It's not
industry,
just a good idea.
you got to make it happen. You got to get the people in the room who can make it happen to understand it and pull the trigger. Can you talk a little bit about the SCERTS model for those who don't know about it? Because I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, so the SERTS model, some of your listeners might be familiar with Barry Prezant. He is the first author. So Dr. Prezant, he is the author of, or co-author of Uniquely Human as well. So he's the first author of SERTS and he's the co-author. And I always like to say, like for people who are new to the model, if you want to know the feel, the ethos, the culture of SERTS, read Uniquely Human. If you
Hmm.
want to know the practical operational application in the context of supporting somebody, look at certs, right? Like so the two are really hand in glove, but they serve different functions. So certs is a model that's been around for a while, actually. We first published as a group, all of us together, Barry and getting all the co-authors together in 2003. And he was
Okay.
writing about it a bit before that, actually. So this is not new. It's just we're not a business.
Right.
It's more like we're developmentalists, and this is the right thing. So CERTS is an acronym because you cannot have a model of support for autistic individuals that doesn't have an acronym. They all do, right?
It's
Um,
a,
it's so true. And the really true story, because this is just funny, is when Barry started conceptualizing it, it was CERTS, CERTS, because it
yeah.
was communication, emotional regulation, and transactional support. And he actually got a letter, like a cease and desist letter from the breath mint company.
Oh, oh my gosh. I was
I'm
wondering
like, okay,
about
like
that.
minty fresh breath, model of support for autistic children. Like, I don't think there's going to be much confusion, but at the same time, it was actually kind of serendipitous and fortuitous too, because it added the S on the model. So
Yeah.
the acronym is social communication, emotional regulation,
Okay.
and transactional support. And it is a partnership-based model, which means everything we do in the model is a two-way street. It is the person that's being supported and the people doing the support. So even the name really embodies that. The
Yeah.
SC and ER, we are scaffolding skills in communication and regulation because we know that's the foundation for active engagement. If we empower somebody with those two skills, they can engage in relationships they want to be in. They can engage in activities they're interested in. They can partake in learning that's
Yeah.
important to them.
Yeah.
They
Learning, communication.
You need regulation and communication to be able to be actively engaged. So that's the scaffold, that's the
Yeah.
foundation that we're after for supporting autistic individuals of all ages. So from the littlest of the littles up through adulthood, like that's where we're putting our effort. The T and the S, the last part of the acronym, transactional support, is a little bit jargony, but it comes from Arnold Samaroff's transactional model of development, which means we're in this together. It's an ecosystem. So we are going to change how we provide support based on who the individual is. And it's this give and take. And so there's two different components, we talk about learning support and interpersonal support. So interpersonal support is kind of like that therapeutic use of self. Like, how do I change my communication style to accommodate this person's communication style? How do I think about providing models that are developmentally relevant to them? Like all of those pieces for somebody, supporting regulation and arousal, using my own regulation and arousal, that co-regulation piece we were talking about, right? And then the learning support is, how do we modify the activity? Like the environment, how do we think about the sensory properties? How are we clearing, giving predictability? How do we make sure this person has access to their preferred communication system that they can use? Not the one we think they should use, not what their highest developmentally sophisticated ability it is, but the one that, oh gosh, I talk with my hands all the time.
Yeah,
I
that's the
Zoom
first.
does that to me,
That is
but
funny that we got the first.
oh, you haven't had that happen before?
Well, not on a podcast. I've had it in
Oh my
some of
gosh.
our
Well,
meetings.
I should know better, but I lecture all the time with my hands, and invariably at some point, like during me talking, like balloons go off or like hearts or something, and it does crack me up. But
Just yeah, for the listeners, I just have to say, like again, because we're doing a Zoom call, so Amy was gesturing with her hands, and all of a sudden we saw tons of confetti come flying down across the screen. It was like a big celebration.
it was like party. So I said something really great.
It was great. It was so great.
But that's the ethos of SCERTS. Like if we want to support change and growth in the individual or the young person, we have to be willing to change and grow with them. So everything's a partnership. And so even like when we set a goal within SCERTS, if there's a goal around communication, let's just say that we're helping support somebody initiate communication for a range of functions, right? Because not just requesting, but a range of functions for true human connection. And we're going to talk about doing that through whatever their preferred communication means is. So typing, spelling, letterboard, picture communication, mouth words, whatever, like we're going to set that up when partners do X. Like the goal is written right there, that the partner piece is embedded in the goal. So you can't take data on the goal if the partner hasn't done their part. And that is really a huge part of SCERTS that sets it aside from a lot of other models. Like it is really like you got to walk the walk and you got to be in there relationally with somebody. And so, and even in our assessment, like if we were doing an assessment to get a developmental profile for an individual or a young person, and we want to know about their communication regulation, at the very same time, we're assessing the transactional supports are in place. How is the person adapting their interpersonal style? What communication access is available to them? Because you can't understand a young person's profile unless you put that profile in context. Because I'm sure your son's developmental profile would look different with you than with a random assessor in a room that he's never been in before or has no relationship with.
100%, right.
Right?
Yeah, right.
So the context matters. Like, so everything we do in SCERTS, that partner piece is like wrapped into it. So I think that's my nutshell elevator speech. I will tell you that
that's great.
We've brought on, we've always been informed by the autistic community. Obviously, over the last 20 years, the information they've been sharing with us is more, and there's more people giving more diverse perspectives, and we're constantly figuring out like how do we pull that in and weave that with the neuroscience and weave that with educational theory and things. But we've officially brought on my colleague that you mentioned, who's my partner at Autism Level Up, Dr. Jacqueline Feedy, who is autistic and is also a developmental psychologist, as a formal partner in SCERTS now. And she is helping us rewrite some of the materials, which is awesome. So Jacqueline would like us to rethink our acronym, I will tell you. So instead of social communication, she would like it to be significant communication, because she doesn't want people to get wrapped up in what we holistic people think is social communication, the greeting, the talking about the weather, the small talk. She's like, all communication has a social component because there's someone you're connecting with. She's like, but what's significant for me is being able to ask for information for clarification and being able to correct somebody's inaccuracies. Like, she's like, it's not saying hi.
Right. No, that's fair. That's totally fair.
Jacqueline would like us to, and I think it's more of a reframe for us to not get caught up on the performative communication, but really think about what is meaningful for people to connect. So that's why she says significant communication. She would also like to change emotional regulation or just expand it to include energy regulation, because from my work in Autism Level Up, because I know you've been on the website, but your listeners might not know, we have a whole energy regulation framework, because emotion is sometimes a difficult concept for autistic people to identify in the way non-autistic or autistic people do, right? It just doesn't resonate. And Jacqueline's a developmental psychologist. She's a full-grown adult with a PhD, and she doesn't use emotion words to describe her experience, but she has huge regulatory challenges. And she talks a lot about it in terms of the energy in her body. So she would like it to kind of be both energy and emotion, because she knows emotion is valuable for some people. It's just not for her. And then she thinks transactional support and Arnold Samaroff is just jargony. So she wants to change that to two-way street. So
Well,
she
energy.
wants to level up that acronym for us.
And how far is she getting? How's she doing so far?
Well, she's won me over because I work with her every day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we can see it
I
happen.
think there are Emily Rubin and Barry Prezant and
Mhm.
myself were kind of the core active collaborators that are continuing to work on the model. Amy Weatherby is still associated with the model. She's a research professor at Florida State, but she's not an active collaborator. And so now, she only has to win 3 of us over. She's already got me, and she's
Uh,
pretty persuasive.
yeah. I'll bet.
So keep your eyes open. We'll see if the acronym actually changes. It will still be SCERTS, but it might just be slightly different.
Yeah, like different meanings, but it may again maybe more accurate. And I could see that, especially like again when you talk about energy. Energy is super important, particularly I mean in across the board. But I know, like I said, I always kind of approach this all from my perspective in the world that I know with non-speakers and with Stone, and just again realizing the energy that it takes, right? Like because of the with apraxia.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about a little bit is, talk about like initiation. Why is initiation so challenging, for this population? And why do we see, and kind of teeing it up, or have you seen situations where initiation has regressed over time because of maybe types of therapy that they've gotten that where they've had to,
Yeah.
So I'll leave it open to you, Amy.
I'm
There,
not quite sure where I want to start with that
I know.
one.
I'm teeing it up. Go with it where you may.
So, an initiation it's complex, right? Like if we think initiation is the start of praxis in theory, but really there's an ideation before there's an initiation.
Yeah.
And if there's a disconnect between kind of cognitive and motor skill, that moving from ideation to initiation can be so challenging for people. And that's really one of kind of the hallmarks of dyspraxia is that disconnect between those two things, that motor coordination being so difficult. And I think to your, not to jump too far ahead, but
Yeah.
this idea of if you have any degree of dyspraxia or you have a motor skill that's difficult for you, it is genuinely difficult and draining in a different way than it is for somebody else, because it is going to require a lot more cognitive.
Like you have to like really
You gotta
have to,
focus. You can't,
yeah.
like the automaticity that you or I have in a motor plan, it's not there. Like it does that auto, because you don't have that same kind of practice sequence, the Hebbian principle of neurons that fire together wire together, and like so movement becomes easy and automatic. Like that piece just doesn't happen as smoothly for people. And I think that I think we have to be perfectly honest. There's a wide range when we
Of
talk about
course.
someone who's
Of
dyspraxic or
course.
apraxic.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are extreme challenges in those areas, and other people who have more subtle challenges in those areas. But one of the things we know, so there's that motor component, right?
Yeah.
And then we can also add on this communication aspect, because they're I don't want to silo things, but sometimes it's useful to talk about things in silos to figure out, oh my gosh, when we put them all together, this is really hard for somebody, right? So
Yeah.
there's the motor piece, but then individuals often have communication differences as well. And even some of the most articulate, well-spoken individuals who use mouth words, who are autistic, will tell you that it is draining and taxing to engage in conversation and use those mouth words. Right? So you have somebody who might have that profile too. So, and then we wind up in systems, maybe based on certain types of therapy. Let's talk about like, I'm in a school today, and if I hear it once in a school in a day, I hear it multiple times. Use your words. Whatever
Hmm.
those words
Oh,
are. It could be exchange of a picture symbol, it could be spelling, it could be typing, it could be speaking, but use your words. And they're saying that after the young person's probably already sent a really clear nonverbal signal. Like they've pushed something away, they've shaken their head, they've walked away. And now you're saying, you have to repair this and use all of this cognitive power and this motor piece that can be difficult for you and do it to the way I want you to. Like I understood you, but it wasn't good enough.
right. Right. Yeah, I'm shaking my head. I mean, yeah, it's
Because did I ask you to explain your head shake? No, I knew you were right there with me. Do you know what I
you
mean?
didn't
Like,
tell me
so
to just now use my words,
no, yeah.
right?
Jacqueline's always like, can you imagine if you texted somebody and every time you texted them, they texted back and said, no, you need to call me and tell me.
Right. Right.
Hey, she's like, you would stop interacting with that person so fast.
Or
One, because of the
emojis,
control,
even
and two, because of the
emojis,
effort and
right?
energy. Like
Yeah.
you would not want to engage with that human. And I'm like, you're right. Like, you're right. And so, like, there's this piece about the embodied cognition and the initiation and the motor load of that. There's the communication challenge, and now there's other humans telling you, even though we understood you, you didn't do it in a way we like it, so you have to do it again.
So
You're
what is that?
gonna withdraw. Your
I was just gonna
initiation is
say,
gonna drop way off
that's
because
what
you are
it
not
is.
gonna trust anybody.
Okay,
That
that's exactly it. That's what I wanted to get to. What does it
yeah.
do? Like what is the end result? And that's ex you just stated it.
And you're also gonna feel like you're not an effective communicator,
Yeah.
right? I sent this message. I sent it 7 different ways and they won't accept it. Why would I try again?
Why would
It's
I
hard
try?
for me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm putting it all out there and you're telling me it's not enough? Any human who gets in a situation who feels like they're not responded to withdraws. So you take somebody who's already at risk for having challenges in those areas, and
Yeah.
instead of like just really being there, I always say like for our earliest communicators, so children who are truly nonverbal, who haven't moved into a verbal form of communication, symbolic
Yeah.
form yet, or are non-speakers, I don't care. Like our best thing that we can do is respond, respond, respond. We need them to know, however they're sending us a signal, that we hear it, that we are with them, that we are responding, that we're in it with them, right? And if we get that, that they know that they're a capable communicator and they know that we're trustworthy, then we have the platform to start to build and scaffold and help develop communication in different ways. But if we don't have that relationship because we're coming at them selling, do it a different way, no.
Yeah. Or yeah, exactly. You do a different way, or you're only going to be rewarded if you do it in a certain way, or punished if you don't do it this way, or like, all of that.
This will
That's
be
good.
withheld. Yeah.
Right. I mean, how does that not destroy trust? How does that not, like you said, cause someone to withdraw and just kind of say, why bother? Like,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
and that, I mean,
it's
I
heartbreaking.
think from an outsider's perspective, which this is going to sound awful to say, people think that's like a best case scenario because the person becomes more passive and withdrawn. Like there's no challenging behavior that's happening around
Right. Yeah.
communication
Right. Right.
breakdowns,
Right.
right? That is awful. You are taking somebody's agency and autonomy, and you're basically saying they have no control or say in their life, right? So they're not a behavior problem. And I'm looking at them going, my heart is breaking because you've
Right.
absolutely created this situation for this human that they feel like they have no agency or autonomy in their life.
I was gonna say it goes from being a quote unquote behavior problem to like just a human problem kind of, right? Like, I
Mm,
mean, yeah, and
yeah.
that is that is the heartbreak that you see there, and but it can be addressed. Obviously, it can be addressed. There
Yes.
is hope. I want you to
Oh,
talk.
absolutely. And
Yeah,
even for kids or young people who have wound up in those situations where that trust has been broken or hasn't been, established for them, there's always room to grow those things. It just takes longer and real commitment on both parties to get there because undoing is hard.
it's really hard. It's really hard. And again, speaking from experience, It's possible, but it's hard because you're
Yeah.
talking about, again, depending on the individual, years and years of being in this model or in this framework, and again, trying to deprogram almost someone from this. Just it takes a lot of work and a lot of time.
Yeah. And the worst is when kids, you see the young people who have been in situations where they've tried to get the right answer all along. Like
Hmm.
they've tried to do what they think somebody else wants, and that they're just sitting there like, and they're throwing things out because and there's no true representation of what they would want to say or what their idea is. They're just trying to get it right for
Yeah,
somebody else. And I'm
that's
always like,
so accurate. That's so accurate. Let's jump to the website real quick because I know we do have a time limit, and again, as I told you in the email, and again, we could talk forever. This easily.
your listeners want to stay on forever. No.
They do. Hey, so much good stuff. But there is a lot of good stuff on the website on autismlevelup.com. I think it's really kind of like uniquely designed and organized. And I say that again because my day job is digital marketing, and we do websites and things like that, so I can speak to that. One of the things that stood out, again, it's very practical. Like you've made you've got the tools and supports. Before you dive into that, though, why don't you give kind of an overview for people in terms of how did it come together? What's your vision for it? And what do you want it to be for people?
Yeah, so Autism Level Up is a partnership. We are two developmental psychologists. So I've talked a lot about my OT roots, but I am also a developmental psychologist as well. And Jacqueline and I started partnering together to kind of create tools that we will say are grounded in useful reality, right? So, like, what support is really affirming of somebody, but works within the context that we have to operate within. Like both of those things have to be true, right? Um, Something has to be sustainable and useful,
Yeah.
and really provide that support. So, how did it start? So I had a website that was really dedicated to providing practical tools that aligned with the SCERTS model. So for a really
Okay.
long time. So I would be in a school consult, I'd generate something, I'd give it to the school for them to use, and I'd be like, hey, if I made it already, I might as well make it available to the world.
Yeah,
Right. So
throw it up
that
on the website. Yeah.
what'd you say? Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Like
throw
it
it on.
exists. Why
Yeah.
don't other people get to use it?
Yeah.
And that's we always say we are not great business people because pretty much everything on there is free. Like, but again, it's useful reality. We want people to have access to these supports. Like that's the most important thing is access for the people who actually need them and will use them. And so Jacqueline is autistic. She went through a major burnout. And the burnout that she went through, the very short story of it is wound up needing to support her in different ways. I, at that point, was really steeped in emotional regulation.
Hmm.
Very quickly learned that emotional regulation was not going to work to support her, but I did have the skill set in terms of physiological arousal and all those pieces. So started working through with her to help her in her recovery, just very basic energy regulation supports. And then as she was recovering and becoming a really active part in the process of kind of like tool generation and like things, started kind of creating them, throwing them out to the community at large, getting feedback, reframing them, and providing them. So the core suite of tools, I suppose, on the website is around this framework of energy regulation that
Yeah,
we've
I'm just looking
introduced.
at it right now. Yeah, well, I love it.
And we have a full manual that goes behind it. Like if people want to buy our deep thoughts about it, they can do
Hmm.
that. But
Good.
if they just want to hit the ground running and have a basic understanding of the framework and tools that they can pick up and use tomorrow, those are on the website for free that they can grab those. So, and then as we've done our work, we've done a lot of different work to support communication as well, a lot around predictability. There's just a lot of different like key concepts that we know that are supportive for neurodivergent individuals. And it usually comes out of, hey, we made this for, ooh, let's provide it to everybody. And sometimes it's the community coming to us and saying, what do you have for? Like some of your listeners might be familiar with, there is a concept that is thrown around a lot called the size of the problem, where people get to judge how big your problem is and if your reaction is in keeping with what the size of the problem is, right? Like You stubbed your toe. That is not a big problem. You
Yeah.
should not have a big reaction to that. So Jacqueline and I are both research psychologists. So we did a little research experiment where we threw out to the community a survey and had people rank problems. And what do you know? You cannot determine the size of somebody else's problem.
Right.
A stuffed animal falling off a bed is a really big problem for some people and not a problem at all for other people. Global warming is enormously overwhelming and hugely impactful for some people and not really a thought for others, right? Like, so through this, we developed a whole nother kind of like suite of supports called Solve, Not Size. And it really looks at how do you support somebody through when they are having a problem. And then we had teachers come back at us and say, well, what if the problem is actually just the problem? And so then we created a whole nother support around like, how do we help you understand like what kind of problem is it? Is this activity a must-do activity? Is it needs to be done, but it's negotiable? Or is it entirely up to the person? You know what? There are very few things in the world, really, that are must-do activities. They usually come down to health and safety. After that, pretty much everything's need to be done but negotiable. So the support, like, it's that transactional piece. It helps the adults around the children realize it doesn't have to be done this way. We can think about doing it differently, and also help the child know which parameters are negotiable. Like, not everything's negotiable all the time.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so we've got tons of supports like that. Somebody else came to us and, well, not just one person, lots of people came to us and said, what do you have for whole body listening? Because that doesn't work for me. So we created a whole body learner. And so it just and so everything we create is done from a neurodivergent informed perspective, goes out to the community for testing, revamp, and then goes back out for people to use. So we've got all sorts of things. We even have support for helping individuals express pain, discomfort, and difference. Because even if you have a symbolic communicator, somebody who has a symbolic system for communication, you get into a doctor's office, being able to convey the feels in their body can be really hard. So we work with an autistic graphic artist to create all the feels, which are these amazing pop art graphics for all these sensations, everything from like tingle to hot to sparkle. There's a shattered and a caged. I mean, they're just so cool. They're pow and puff and yeah.
Wow, that's all.
I love creating things.
Obviously. Well, I mean, again, it's a great, vast toolbox. I encourage, like you said, adults who have, neurodivergent, autistic individuals in their lives, whether again you could be a parent, grandparent, teacher, therapist. I mean, there's so much there. I think. I mean, there's tools that I know that we're going to utilize in the future, even though our son's 20.
I'll also just say, I mean, because I'm sure listeners are varied. A lot of adults use our tools themselves.
Yeah. I mean, these aren't just
and Jacqueline. I mean, Jacqueline uses them as well, but they're kind of ageless. I mean, some of them certainly will gear themselves towards different.
Yeah.
But the framework, how they're structured, they're really kind of, you can modify them for anybody. And I am going to tell you that Jacqueline decided to learn how to code during COVID, and that website is a result of her learning to code because she was bored.
Oh, well, give her my kudos.
I will.
Well done. Yeah, well done.
I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I'm just like, can you put that up there?
She did it. All right. Well, as I told you, we're coming up to the end of our time, but we do have a couple segments. I do want to at least try to squeeze in a couple because I know you're going to bring it, Amy. The first one
I don't know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's all right. All right. You have like 30 seconds to think of it because we have a jingle for it. The first one's going to be our Autism Tip of the Week.
Hey parents, gather around, it's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
All right, it's that time again. Our Autism Tip of the Week. And since we put you on the spot, Amy, what do you got?
I have a lot, but I really think I'm going to go for a simple one that probably has been said different ways and different times on your podcast, which is ask the deep why. When you see your child do something, the first thing you should do is go, why is that happening? Right? Like, don't jump to judgment. Don't try to think you know what it is. Just kind of sit back and go, I wonder. And then try to figure out, kind of where it's coming from. And it might be something that brings them joy. It might be something that's a challenge for them. It might be something that they seem really interested in and you can't, you're like, oh, I don't know. But like sit with the why and try to think about it from like what you know about who they are and why that thing is interesting or enlightening to them. And the flip side of that, especially if we're looking at something that they're passionate about, that they love, that they're really interested in, is don't try to take their special interest hostage.
I love that.
Like,
That's a great
don't
one.
think we're going to turn this into work.
Right.
Like, why do they love it? Appreciate it with them, be in it with them, and don't think, how do I leverage this? Because we don't want the thing they love to become something that becomes aversive.
Right. Or questioned or anything, right? Just kind of let them love it. No, that's great. See, I knew you'd come through. I knew you'd come through. All right, we have another one we'll get in here. We're going to do autism fact or fiction.
Get QuickTime ready, and here we go. This is Autism Fact or Fiction. We're breaking down what's real, what's rumor, and what might surprise you. Let's go.
Okay, this is again where we like to try to break down a common belief or stereotype. I'm going to throw one out at you, okay? So I'm going to put you on the spot. So here's again maybe kind of a stereotype. You know, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but they would be calm behavior equals regulation.
How long do we have? Another half an hour?
No, we got about 3 minutes. Sorry. I mean, I could talk all day. I know you've got the hard stop, Amy.
This is legitimately a soapbox of mine for like the last 20 something years.
Oh, great. Perfect.
And I have for over 20 years had a slide that says calm does not equal regulation most of the time. And there's an asterisk and it says most of the time. And I think that's such an important thing because especially if we're talking in this concept of energy regulation, we kind of talk about arousal states, anything from low, asleep, up to maxed out and frenzied. Each one of those states has a fit somewhere for somebody. And in most of our days, we hit each of those states. So like if I always say, like when I'm talking, if I was calm right now, this would be an entirely different conversation, right?
Right.
But I'm pretty amped up. And that's what kind of brings the energy and that's well regulated. Honestly, my brain doesn't function. My brain doesn't function well if I'm calm. Like I'm not going to string coherent thoughts together and be able to answer your questions quickly. But if I'm amped up and I'm firing, I am. So in this podcast, and that's what's so important, in the context of this podcast and a conversation where I know someone's going to be asking me questions, amped up and fidgety is the energy I want. Amped up and fidgety is the energy I have. I am well regulated, even though I've got a whole lot of energy right now, and nobody would describe me as calm.
Right. That's perfect. Perfect description. Love it.
And when it's time for bed tonight and you're sleepy and you want to be sleepy, you're well regulated. Doesn't mean you're calm. It means that your energy's down to a point that you're actually going to be able to fall asleep. Right?
Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you. Okay, I'm going to do one more again.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah, one more. Again, this is our parent confession of the week, and of course we have a jingle for that.
I love the jingles.
Morning routines can go astray. Found socks in the fridge one day. Laughter's the best remedy. Hey, we're just finding our own way. Mom, dad, confessions every week. Sharing joys and moments we seek. Honest tales that make us unique. Join the club, we're never meet.
All right. So again, this is the time I like to show our humanity, show that again, things happen, right? And we just talk about stuff that you look back at. Like I said, either, shudder or laugh at or whatever. And so I'm going to kick off this one again because you helped tee it up so well earlier, Amy, and I want to put you on the spot again. But if you have a confession, you're welcome to it. But mine is you talked about those 3 words, use your words. And I've been guilty of that. I was guilty of that when we were younger. We were trained to say that. That's kind of, I think, our societal expectation. Again, it comes with a bias. Again, speaking is the preferred method of communication, all those things that you're familiar with. But again, it's one of those things I look back at and I want to throw punch myself. Like it's just because again,
Ouch,
like,
no. Right.
because realizing that, also like they they would use their words, like they're gonna use their freaking words if they could. Like this isn't something that they're choosing to do. Like every child, every person wants to be heard. Every person wants to communicate. If they're not able to form the words to say or do what they're doing, there's a reason for it. So don't say that. And I regret. I regret that I did.
Think there's all those things, right? And I think so many times, and I will throw myself under the bus, and it's not a funny thing. It's actually one that really does make me cringe. I had a young person that I was supporting who would come to therapy at the sensory integration clinic, and he was amazing. He was a brilliant young person, so smart, and he. We were working on motor planning, executive functioning, just sensory integration and regulation in general. And transitions out were horrible for him. And it was because he got into this place that he felt really well supported and he didn't want to leave.
Sure.
And I remember I was on the clock and I was a young therapist and I was like, what do I do to help him leave? Knowing that it's always a struggle, it's always a hard time. And at the time, the person who was supervising me was helping me move through things. And she did say, we need to take a more behavioral tact. You're going to use the schedule. You're going to be very clear in your expectations, which is developmental too. And she's like,
Yeah.
you're going to end your session early. You're going to have his shoes outside the room. And you're actually going to have to like physically help him out of the room if he's not moving. And I did it once. And I was like, oh, never again. But like, I really wish I could go back and apologize to him. But I
Sure.
was like, you tried the things that people who've done it longer than you have told you to do it. I'm like, how many kids would I go back to and say, I'm really sorry, I didn't know better? I'm pretty sure
course.
I could say it to every client I've worked with at some point, right? Like,
And see, that's
do I try to do the best I can every day? I absolutely do. But there are days that Jacqueline and I will be in an office together and we'll just be talking and she will just turn around and look at me and I'll be like, I really wish we had a camera on us so people could see like just these different neurotypes trying to navigate together and where the breakdowns happen and like how funny we think they are. Like they're some
Yeah.
of the most telling things on the planet, but you have to be willing to meet it with humor, right? Like as opposed to like,
you have to.
I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah.
Which I think anytime we get into that kind of power struggle which is the shoes thing, right? I'm right. It's time for you to leave. You're wrong because you're not leaving. As opposed to, let me sit back and really understand your experience and let's try to figure this out together. Even if that's
Yeah.
just making a plan for how we're going to connect between now and your next time or something,
Yeah. Well, again, you brought it. I knew you would. That's a perfect confession. And I know we are up on time. So I just want to wrap this up by, again, reminding listeners and viewers, check out autismlevelup.com. We referred to it earlier. Amy, is there any other way you want people to find you or reach out to you? Or is the website
I think
the
that's
best?
the best way right now. Our SCERTS website is under construction, but that one should be coming online soon too, if people are interested in that too. And as I said, it is connected to me because Uniquely Human is part and parcel of SCERTS, but that's Barry's work. But I definitely recommend people check that out too.
Well, Amy, thank you again. This has been wonderful, beyond my expectations. Learned so much. I really appreciate you being on the show. And for all the listeners out there, thank you again for joining us. Make sure you reach out, send us feedback, leave us a review, and we will catch you again next week on the lighter side of the spectrum.